Here too, the vision and prophetic gleam lit into miracles, common, meaningless shapes. Then the divine afflatus, spent, withdrew. Unwanted, fading from the mortal's range. And this is a very important passage because the vision and the prophetic gleam have attempted to descend, and they have descended for some moments. We don't know how long. But in their descent, they lit into miracles these common meaningless shapes. And the common meaningless shapes can be anything. They can be in nature, they can be in men, it can be in anything. But, and now here's the key after that semicolon, center, yeah. Then the divine afflatus, spent, withdrew. Unwanted, fading from the mortal's range. Now, this afflatus, this miraculous creative inspiration, this divine imparting of knowledge, that is often called the divine afflatus. And that's a dictionary definition, and Sri Aurobindo uses the term here. Now, that great moment of the divine afflatus, attempting to come to earth or coming to earth briefly, is now spent. And so it withdrew, because it's unwanted, fading from the mortal's range. But what happened next is very, very important. A sacred yearning lingered in its trace. The worship of a presence and a power too perfect to be held by death-bound hearts, the prescience of a marvelous birth to come. So earth and humanity was not yet ready. Not yet ready for the divine presence to fully descend on earth. And yet, it's the prescience of a marvelous birth to come. The prescience, the foreknowledge. And now, Sri Aurobindo tells us, only a little the God light can stay. Spiritual beauty illumining human sight, lines with its passion and mystery, matter's mask, and squanders eternity on a beat of time. We have to take these lines of Sri Aurobindo deep within our inner being, because otherwise they cannot really be understood. But this God light that can only stay a little is what we have felt for millenniums. An avatar descends and he brings a gift to the world. Whether it's Buddha or Christ or Krishna, doesn't matter, any of them. Because spiritual beauty that illumines human sight lines with its passion and mystery, matter's mask. What is this mask of matter? Sri Aurobindo tells us often in Savitri that matter is simply the movement of the spirit. We can say the atoms, the electrons, etc. This matter's mask is lined with this passion and mystery of spiritual beauty that can illumine human sight. But it squanders eternity on a beat of time. Now, squander is a very interesting word here that Sri Aurobindo uses, and he uses it very carefully, because to squander means to wastefully or extravagantly spend something. And it's so important that this divine afflatus come to earth, even if it squanders eternity on a beat of time. And now, Sri Aurobindo is going to tell us about this soul. As when a soul draws near the sill of birth, adjoining mortal time to timelessness, a spark of deity lost in matter's crypt, its luster vanishes in the inconscient plains. That transitory glow of magic fire, so now dissolved in bright, accustomed air. So once again, he's telling us it didn't come, but he talks about the soul that draws near the sill of birth. The sill, is like a window or a door of birth that joins mortal time to timelessness. And what is it? It's a spark of deity lost in this crypt of matter. And therefore its luster vanishes in the inconscient planes. Now, Sri Aurobindo tells us a lot about the inconscient, because it is a key term in the integral yoga. And I'm just going to give you one letter on Savitri from Sri Aurobindo to a disciple. Men have not learnt yet to recognize the inconscient on which the whole material world they see is built, or the ignorance of which their whole nature, including their knowledge, is built. They think that these words are only abstract metaphysical jargon flung about by the philosophers in their clouds, or labored out in long and wearisome books like The Life Divine. Sri Aurobindo's marvelous humor. Now, another letter, I think I need to share this also. Is it really a fact that the ordinary reader would not be able to see any difference between the inconscient and ignorance, unless the difference is expressly explained to him? This is not a matter of philosophical terminology, but of common sense and the understood meaning of English words. One would say, even the inconscient stone, but one would not say, as one might of a child, the ignorant stone. One must first be conscious before one can be ignorant. What is true is that the ordinary reader might not be familiar with the Vedantic idea of the ignorance as the power behind the manifested world. But I don't see how I can acquaint him with these things in a single line, even with the most illuminating image or symbol. So that transitory glow of magic fire, so now dissolved in bright, accustomed air. Full stop. The message ceased, and waned the messenger. The single call, the uncompanioned power, drew back into some far-off secret world, the hue and marvel of the supernal beam. For us, supernal means generally heavenly. And Sri Aurobindo says in the letters on yoga and himself, in the ancient Indian system, there is only one triune supernal, Satchidananda. Or if you speak of the upper hemisphere as the supernal, there are three, Sat plane, Chit plane, and Ananda plane. The supermind could be added as a fourth, as it draws upon the other three and belongs to the upper atmosphere. She looked no more on our mortality. The excess of beauty, natural to Godkind, could not uphold its claim on time-born eyes. Too mystic real for space tenancy, her body of glory was expunged from heaven. And of course, expunged is annihilated. The rarity and wonder lived no more. There was the common light of earthly day. Affranchised from the respite of fatigue, once more the rumor of the speed of light pursued the cycles of her blinded quest. Well, this is basically our life on earth. We see the common light of earthly day. The sun rises and it sets. Affranchised means freed from a state of dependence. It's no longer dependent on this respite, this cessation of fatigue. But what does it do when it's freed of that? It pursued the cycles of her blinded quest. All sprang to their unvarying daily acts. The 1,000 peoples of the soil and tree obeyed the unforeseeing instant's urge, and leader here, with his uncertain mind, alone who stares at the future's covered face, man lifted up the burden of his fate. Now, this is the first time we hear of Savitri. And Savitri too awoke among these tribes that hastened to join the brilliant summoner's chant, and lured by the beauty of the apparent ways, acclaimed their portion of ephemeral joy. So Savitri is not going to have anything to do with this, and we're going to hear about this in a moment. I promised you that I would share a few things from the mother on Savitri. And here is one. She spoke this to Udar, and she said, Savitri is a mantra for the transformation of the world. So the 1,000 peoples of the soil and tree These peoples of the soil and tree are, of course, the animals and the birds. They obeyed the unforeseen instant's urge of this force that is attempting to manifest in the earth. But leader here, with his uncertain mind, man lifted up the burden of his fate. And Savitri too awoke among these tribes that hastened to join the brilliant summoner's chant, and lured by the beauty of the apparent ways, acclaimed their portion of ephemeral joy. So they laid claim to their portion of this ephemeral, this passing joy, this transitory joy. And now back to Savitri. Akin to the eternity whence she came, no part she took in this small happiness. A mighty stranger in the human field, the embodied guest within made no response. The embodied guest within is the divine presence, the Lord. Savitri is not yet aware that she is the Divine Mother. She has to go through many things: her birth, her youth, her marriage to Satyavan, and his passing. All of these things we'll see before she realizes who she truly is. So the embodied guest within made no response. The call that wakes the leap of human mind, its checkered, eager motion of pursuit, its fluttering hued illusion of desire, visited her heart like a sweet alien note. So, this checkered motion, this movement that has shifts and changes, and is marked by dubious episodes. We see on a checkerboard how the checkers can move only in certain directions. So we have this checkered, eager motion of pursuit, and this fluttering hued illusion of desire visited her heart like a sweet alien note. Time's message of brief light was not for her. In her, there was the anguish of the gods, imprisoned in our transient human mold, the deathless, conquered by the death of things. A vaster nature's joy had once been hers, but long could keep not its gold heavenly hue, or stand upon this brittle earthly base. A narrow movement on time's deep abysm, life's fragile littleness denied the power, the proud and conscious wideness, and the bliss she had brought with her into the human form. Now this is very interesting, because what we see here is that this fragile littleness of life denies this power of Savitri, this proud and conscious wideness, and the bliss that she had brought with her into the human form. Not only that, but the calm delight that weds one soul to all, and the key to the flaming doors of ecstasy. Earth's grain that needs the sap of pleasure and tears, rejected the undying rapture's boon, offered to the daughter of infinity her passion flower of love and doom she gave. Now we have to understand that Sri Aurobindo has accepted the great epic writer's idea to begin the poem, whether it's Dante or Virgil, as a flashback. So we see that Savitri is actually a flashback, and the story doesn't start until book 4. So now we see Earth's grain. Shraddhavan has it that Earth's grain is Earth's nature, which is fine. But Sri Aurobindo also says that needs the sap of pleasure and tears. So I think Earth's grain here is Earth's nature. And therefore it rejected the undying rapture's boon, offered to the daughter of infinity her passion flower of love and doom she gave. Now the passion flower, we all know, is a very unique flower. And I have researched it rather deeply. It's a climber. It has a crown and a conspicuous stalk that bears the stamens and pistil, and often has a very delicious fruit. When I visited the ashram in Colombia, I saw maybe 9 or 10 different passion flowers and the fruits, and ate them. So here's the symbolism of the passion flower. In the West, it is a symbol of Christ's passion. The central pillar represents the column where Christ was flogged, and the many slender tendrils surrounding its base were likened to the cords and whips used in the scourging. The 3 top stigmas, each with a roughly rounded head, symbolize the 3 nails used to drive the spikes into Christ's flesh. The 5 anthers are symbolic of the 5 sacred wounds, and the circle of filaments that compose the dramatic center of the flower represent the crown of thorns. The rays within the flower form a nimbus, representing the divine's divine glory. The sinful world that Christ came to save by the supreme sacrifice of his life. Now, in India, it is different. It is believed, with reference of the Hindu epic Mahabharata, that there are about 100 of blue petals, 1 for each of the Kauravas, 5 of the yellow ones in the center, 1 for each of the Pandavas. The green bulb in the center symbolizes Draupadi, the queen of Pandava. The 3 filaments are for the Holy Trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. And the radial in the center is the Sudarshan Chakra of Lord Krishna. How beautiful. In vain now seemed the splendid sacrifice. A prodigal of her rich divinity, herself and all she was, she had lent to men, hoping her greater being to implant and in their bodies' lives acclimatize, that heaven might native grow on mortal soil. Now here's a very interesting line, because it does not occur in all the previous editions of Savitri. It was found by the Archive Center, and they added, and in their bodies' lives acclimatize. Oh, so interesting. So Savitri was a prodigal of her rich divinity, and herself and all she was, she had lent to men, hoping her greater being to implant, and in their bodies' lives, no, center please, center chairs, and in their bodies' lives acclimatize, that heaven might native grow on mortal soil. And then we see this rather sorrowful line, these lines from Sri Aurobindo. Hard is it to persuade earth nature's change. Mortality bears ill the Eternal's touch. It fears the pure, divine intolerance of that assault of ether and of fire, Agni. It murmurs at its sorrowless happiness. Almost with hate, repels the light it brings. It trembles at its naked power of truth and the might and sweetness of its absolute voice. Well, yes, we can see that it is very hard to persuade this change of earth nature. Look around you. Look around the world. Look at the wars. Look at the hate and the hate-filled beings, the beings that want to establish the Titan's world on earth, crushing humanity. So mortality bears ill the Eternal's touch, because mortality fears the pure divine intolerance of that assault of ether and of fire. Now, fire, of course, is Agni, but the assault of ether is what science still cannot quite accept. Science still believes in the five senses, basically. Although now it's agreeing that there is consciousness that has perhaps created the Big Bang. They're not too sure yet. But the ether is where Sri Aurobindo speaks very beautifully of that plane of existence. And it's actually this, in the definition, it's the regions beyond the Earth's atmosphere, the regions of space, sort of, at least in the dictionary, the heavens. But it is an element especially believed in ancient and medieval civilizations to fill all space above the sphere of the moon and to compose the stars and planets. So it's also a hypothetical, again, Mann's dictionary, hypothetical medium formerly believed to permeate all space and through which light and other electromagnetic radiation were thought to move, getting a little closer. It murmurs at its sorrowless happiness, almost with hate, repels the light it brings. It trembles at its naked power of truth and the might and sweetness of its absolute voice. Inflicting on the heights the abysm's law, it sullies with its mire heaven's messengers. Its thorns of fallen nature are the defense it turns against the Savior hands of grace. It meets the sons of God with death and pain.